All right, we're back. All right, so one of the first things you're going to need to do is decide who's working on what, right? So this is a big project, or it can be a big project, but there's going to be lots of different things that people are going to have to tackle, and you're going to have to all sit down as a group and decide exactly what it is that you're going to want to do. And I'm going to ask you to do this in a very specific way. So what I want to use for this particular project is, I would refer to it as probably like a Kanban board, if you've ever heard of such a term. I'm about to show you one. In GitHub, it's called a board. So when you create a project in GitHub for your project, you'll create it as a board. We'll give it a title up here. I'm actually using that same menu system repository that I used last week, 1 week ago. You'll do this on your project repository when you create that on Wednesday. And here is our board for our particular project. You can see these are called lanes. So every task is going to start over here in sort of the to-do lane. This is the list of things that need to be done. And the first thing that you and your group are going to need to do for the project is sit down and brainstorm some things that need to go into this. For our purposes, for this menu system, we've actually kind of already done a few tasks. If you remember, I already kind of coded up a few things last week. But to add something onto here, we're going to say things in a very particular way. I want to say, oops. Oh. Sorry. I want to say everything in a particular format. I want everything that gets added to the project to be driven by a need, driven by a requirement for one of our users. So we always have to think about who's going to be using this application, right? It's usually not us, or even if it is us, it's us and some other people, right? So it's not just us by ourselves, but our users, the people who ultimately we want to use this project, to use this program. So every task that appears on this board, I want to see follow a similar format, which this doesn't. They've changed the UI on this since the last time I've done it. Okay. Sure. Okay, this is a bit more like what I was looking to do. So the way that they changed the UI on me a little bit since the last time that I've done this. But the way to do this is to come down here, and we want to create a new issue. And the issue that we're going to create is going to have a particular format. So for a blank issue, we'll say that a blank should be able to blank, where it's our job to fill in those two blanks. The first blank is going to be a category of users. So the word user can go into that blank, right? But think that you also might have administrators. Those are also users, right? You also might have different kinds of users with different roles. So try and be as specific as you can here. Maybe the generic word user will fit what you're trying to do, but if you can be more specific, if it only applies to an administrator, then say that. Say the specific group that it applies to. And then the second blank is a piece of behavior, right? So for our purposes, I might say something like, a customer should be able to add an item to an order, right? The first blank I put in customer, that's who I expect to be using my menu system, right? Customer. And in the second blank, I said specifically what I think that customer should be able to do. They should be able to add an item to an order. We're going to have to write some code to do that, right? And we're going to have to write some code to show that it works. We're going to have to write some tests to show that it works. We kind of already did that last time. If I were being a bit more formal about it, I would have set all this up last time and done all this last time, but for now we're going to stick with this, and there we go. We can see that as soon as we create that issue, it pops it up on the board, and actually we can also open it up and assign it to somebody. So this is also going to be very important. One thing that I'm going to be looking for on your projects is that everybody is contributing. So if I look at your board, if I look at your project board, which I will, I want to see that everybody gets at least a couple of these, right? Assigned to themselves. It's not just one person assigning all the tasks and doing the work. I want to see that everybody in your group is having at least a couple of these assigned to themselves. So I'll go ahead and assign this to myself, even though I kind of sort of already did this one. I would actually argue though that it's not quite complete yet. What I did do part of this one in class last time. I wrote the unit tests. When we talked about unit testing, I wrote some code to make this happen. But we're actually missing a very important part of this, which is the user interface, right? What is the actual customer going to interact with? And so for our projects, we're going to do everything via the command line. It's going to be a command line app. We're not doing web development, so we're not going to deal with HTML or any of that stuff. We're also not doing UI in this class. I know that you can build windows, right, and buttons and all of that fun stuff. I know how to do some of that stuff. I'd be happy to talk to you about it sometime. That's not really what this class is about. This class is not focused on that. Take a human-computer interaction class. We have a great HCI minor here. So if you're interested in designing good windowed applications or web development applications, we have classes for that here. This just isn't that class. We're going to keep everything on the command line. So that means you're going to be using Scanner, right, to read in feedback from your users. And your menus are probably going to be like to pick a number from 1 until pick an option from the list of options, and then proceed on to the next from there. That's a lot of what is going to be expected. So I would argue that in order to say that this task is completed, right, we need all of those components. We need the tests that show that this task works. We need the code that makes it work, right, and pass the tests. But we also need the user interface, which in our case is Scanner on the command line. And that's the piece that's kind of missing from what I did last week. So I want to do that right now, and also talk a bit about repository organization, which becomes a lot more important when you're working with a group of people. If I'm working by myself, I just commit and push everything to the main branch all the time. There's really nothing wrong with that. If it's just you, and even if it's just you and one other person, you'll probably get away with that most of the time. As soon as your groups get bigger and you have more and more people, that's going to cause more problems. It's going to cause more headaches. You have to have an organized branching strategy. So that's an important part of what we're going to be talking about today as well. After this task has been assigned to somebody, right, we can move it over to the in progress lane. I'm going to be working on this. I'm doing it right now. What does that mean? That means that I'm going to go over to my project, both in Eclipse, but also I need to do some stuff with the repository first. So let's talk about repository structure. This is another category of things that I'm going to be looking for and grading on the project that's coming up. I do not want everybody committing stuff directly to main. In fact, nothing should be committed directly to main on the project. Ever. Some people will do that anyway. That's a pretty common mistake that I see, especially during the first round, but I'm trying to train you to not do that anymore. So let's talk about a more proper way, a more proper branching strategy to use. Let me first navigate to the repository for my menu system, which is right here. This is where my menu system is. This is a Git repository. There's no branches on it right now. It's just everything's in main, right? So let's set it up. I want to have two branches that run parallel to each other. The main branch is really the only stuff that should be in main is stuff that is tested, approved by whoever needs to approve it, the boss man or the people on your team, right? And is ready to be used by the public, ready to be used by the rest of the world, right? So when code hits main, that's what we call production level code. Code that is ready to ship out the door and be used by anybody who wants to use it. If we're just hacking away writing the code, writing the unit test, that's not production level code. That's code that's in progress. code that still needs to be tested, still needs to be reviewed, still needs to have other people look at it and make sure I didn't forget it or make any big obvious mistakes. We want to keep that code separate. We don't want the outside world to see that stuff. That's not for them. That's for us as we work. So we're going to make another branch that's parallel to main. And that branch is usually called develop or just dev. Either is fine. So the way that it'll typically work from here, then, I still don't necessarily want to commit stuff directly to my development branch either. That's less of a problem. But ideally, I want to keep my work separate from everybody else's work as well, because the stuff that you're working on might conflict with my stuff, and vice versa. And I want to make sure that if I'm working on something, I don't necessarily have to worry about interfering with somebody else or somebody else interfering with me. So every single task, or another way to think about it is every single card that you see, every single issue that you see needs to have its own branch as well. And in that branch should go everything that I've been talking about, the unit tests, the code that passes the unit tests, and then any UI code as well. It should all be created and committed to that branch. So in order to make that branch, we would need to say git checkout -b, and then usually the name of this branch is based on the item that we're solving or the task that we're doing. A lot of times they'll even say put the issue number directly in there, so you can refer back to this particular issue directly if you want to. But at least a label for the task itself, add item, right? Add item to order if you want to be a little bit more specific, I suppose, would also be acceptable. And I want you to just kind of think about too, I'm going to draw a wonderful MS Paint diagram just to kind of illustrate, right? This is our main branch. This is our development branch. So these two are kind of running parallel. I can even label them as such. Dev. This is main. And what I just did is I created a branch off of dev for my task. So here's where we are now, add item. Okay? So there's a degree of separation between the code that everybody's using, and I better not break, because otherwise that could ruin everybody's day, and my day. And then this stuff up here, which is where we're actively working on stuff. I hope it works. It may not quite entirely work, or there might be missing pieces, but that's okay. This is not for everybody else. This is just for people working on stuff. And then I'll come back to this diagram a little bit later to show you the next few steps, but let's talk about coding. Let's talk about actually adding this code in. Now that we've got our branches set up, we can do the thing. We can do the thing that we've set out to do. So if our task is a user should be able to add items to an order as soon as Eclipse starts up, we can write code to do that. Okay. So the code from last time that I wrote is down here. And I want to be clear, right? We didn't have this project management piece last time. If we did, I would write this code now. So I know I already did this before, but imagine this code didn't exist. I create the branch first, the add item branch, and then I write my tests in that branch. And then I write the code to pass that test in that branch. So we're going to pretend that I'm doing all that stuff now. I actually do have a little bit more code that I need to write, which is the user interface. There's no actual menu as part of our menu system yet. So let's talk about that for a second. I think this is one thing that I get asked about a lot as part of the project. So this is what our users are going to see. This is going to a lot of times print out a list of options and ask you to select one of the options and then have to respond based on that. I think it's very important to keep in mind that clean code is essential here. We really have to keep code that is functional away from code that is just displaying information. If you put code that is displaying information and getting user input in the same method as actual functional code that is creating things, doing things, moving things, it's going to be impossible to test because you're going to have to stop in the middle of the test and wait for somebody to type something in, and that's just not feasible. You've got to keep those things separate. That's one of the comments that I give most often is to write more methods, separate things out. So, I want to see methods that are, I want to see void methods that do things like print options, right? I suppose I skipped a step here. We should talk about what a menu should have for instance variables and stuff as well. I think we need to have an order, right, that represents our current order. I think you could also argue that there should be a list of menu items that are the potential things that can be ordered, right? What is actually on the menu. And if your menu is broken down into different sections, then you might want to actually consider breaking those lists into different ones by section as well, keep things more organized, and actually maybe even consider making different classes for each of those sections to handle ordering from each of those. It's really up to you to try and match the code to the level of complexity. I'm going to keep things very, 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 very simple for this particular purpose. So in our constructor, we'll just have it initialize our current order. And then down here for print options, we're going to say something like, okay, hi, what do you want? And then we can just print out our options. I think instead of using strings here, there's an argument to be made to use menu items here instead. I'm using strings mostly just to keep things simple and to try and move things along. But we'll have to use menu items eventually. $5. Rise $2.50, and then soda for $1. That's a cheap soda. Okay. These are probably going to need to have numbers out in front, right? So we can actually make it easier for the user to select things. But notice I'm not creating a scanner here. I'm not asking the user to type anything in here. In fact, I think that's another method, right? Getting the user input is another method. If I'm asking them to type in a number from 1 to whatever, then let's make a method that actually asks them to type in that number and retrieves it. Get user input. Now we do need a scanner to do that. I think creating the scanner as an instance variable is a good idea here. Have to import our scanner as usual. Have to initialize our scanner in our constructor. And then finally down here we can say, well, it could just be a one-liner, I suppose. But doesn't really make sense. What we really want them to do is type in a number between 1 and something, where that something could be, right? So what is the max choice? Please enter a number from 1 to there we go. You would probably want to do some kind of a while loop here around this to check, right? Make sure that they can't enter in a negative value, for example. That's something that we definitely talk about in 131. I think for the sake of time and just kind of keeping things moving, I'm gonna skip that for now, but that's definitely something I would expect to see if you were gonna do this for real. And then the final method that I think that we need here before we can kind of take this for a little bit of a spin is to say, okay, we need to do the thing, right? We need to process whatever selection they made. And a lot of times this is going to be a big old if statement or a switch case statement if you prefer that to an if statement. But we're going to take in their selection as an integer and just start asking. If the user selected 1, then I'm going to add a burger to the order. So order current order.add. This is where we have to make a menu item. And why it might have been useful to make these menu items earlier on. I actually kind of regret not doing that. But it's too late now, I suppose. Or is it? I suppose it's okay. There we go. And then we need similar options, right, for the other items on our menu, which I will try to do quickly here so that we can test this out and take it for a spin. These are fries for $2.50. And then the last one was soda for $1. There we go. Cool. All right, so now to test this, let's come down here and do our public static void main. Create our new menu. And then we'll need to first ask them to print out the options, right? Get the user input and then process the selection. So we would say test menu dot print options first, test menu dot get user input. The max choice in this case would be 4, right? Or 3, sorry. And then finally process selection, where we have to take the result of this and plug it in to here. before I run this, I want to take a step back and just kind of reiterate what I did here. I'm hoping that you'll follow a similar sort of approach if and when you need to make a keyboard-based menu for your project, which probably will. This is just displaying the options. This should always be kept separate. Displaying the options should be kept separate. I don't need unit tests for this. How could I unit test that? It's just displaying text on the screen. Actually, there are ways you can unit test that, but that's more of an HCI question than an us question. So don't worry about writing unit tests for that. This one is a little bit more, of an argument for unit testing. It has a return value, so that's kind of nice, right? But you still can't actually test it that easily because it relies on the scanner. But that's actually a good thing. The fact that the scanner is sectioned off, that means that the scanner is not going to interfere with us trying to test other stuff that actually matters. The one that I'm most interested in having unit tests for is this one down here. If the user tells me they want option 3, can I verify that option 3 actually happened properly, right? So think about what you would need to do in order to pull that off. You would need to somehow be able to check and make sure that the soda is the item that got added to the order, which I don't know that we have all of the code to properly test that at this exact moment in time, but with a getter or two, I think it actually could be tested. So we put in a get order on the menu to grab that order object, or even just get number of items, right? Or something like that. That could help us test that method, and I would argue that is a necessary thing that needs to be done here. But I've got more things that I want to chat with you about. So for the sake of keeping things rolling along and giving you some stuff to think about on the project, I'm going to just kind of do a little bit of a test of this now, just to make sure everything appears to work kind of okay. Here's our display menu. It's waiting for me to type in a number. I type in a 1, and I mean, did it work? It looks kind of like it worked, but I don't actually see the results, right? I need a way of being able to see what I work. Or hold on a second, that actually sounds like another item. I need to add another issue here. A new blank issue that says a customer should be able to see the items on their order. Right? That seems reasonable, doesn't it? I don't have that yet. There's a lot of other ones that I think we could add here too, but to return to sort of the task at hand, we're going to assume that we wrote this code, and from our perspective, at least for this simple example, we're going to say that this is done. We consider this done. It's actually not done. I've explained a couple reasons why. I would want to see some unit tests. I would want to see a couple of getters get added, right, to this, so that you can perform some unit tests on this menu to make sure that it's doing what it says. The other unit tests should also have been part of that. But we've got some unit tests, we've got some menu code, and we also have some functional code. And we're going to say, all right, I'm ready. I'm at least ready for my peers to take a look at this and see what's going to happen. So in order to do that, we're just going to go ahead and do our commit. We'll do our commit and our push. I'll say git commit added code to implement adding items to menu. Oh, I forgot to add. Whoops, my bad. I forgot to add the file first. Now I can do the commit. And I should probably push as well. And so when I try to do git push, this is a very common one that we're going to see. It's actually kind of telling you what to do to resolve this. We need to say git push origin. Origin means GitHub. That's what this means. And then the name of the branch that we wish to push, which is add item to order. And there we go. That branch got pushed up. At that point in time, if we go back to our repository, we should see that branch, right? If I can get back to it. Here it is. Let's refresh the page. There we go. We can see that the branch is here now. Is our dev branch here? Our dev branch needs to be pushed as well, actually. Whoops. Okay. That way GitHub knows about all of the branching structure. Yeah, there we go. So I'm not going to make a pull request for the development branch. That's not necessary. But for every task branch, remember, every task is going to have a branch associated with it. When you're ready for the code to be looked over and hopefully accepted as a new piece of your code, you're going to go ahead and create a pull request to compare your branch, the task that you're completing, to the development branch. Not the main branch. Make sure the main branch is in here. We don't want to push stuff to main until it's been 100% ready to go. We're going to push it to the development branch. And at this point in time, this is actually a chance for your group members to review your code and make sure that all the stuff is there and that it's actually correct and there aren't any big glaring mistakes. So I might put a message here. If there's anything that I'm unsure of, I could actually put that here, like, hey guys, worried I don't have enough tests. What do you think? I'll create the pull requests. At this point in time, your group members will actually be able to see this pull request and should review the code. If I'm actually thinking about things from the perspective of my projects board, there's actually another lane that I usually like to add in that isn't included here. So let me show you how you can do that. I'm going to go to Options, Settings, and then if I click on Status, I can actually create a new column to put things in. I usually like to have one that's called In Review. So I'm going to create one for In Review. It's usually going to come in between In Progress and Done, right? So now if we go back to our project, we'll see that, okay, since I created the pull request for this, it is now in review. So that's a signal to my team members that, hey, I created a pull request for this thing. I think it's ready to go. I think it's ready to be part of the actual code. Can you go take a look at it? Let me know if you see anything that's wrong. And at this point, I mean, what happens next kind of depends on what your team members think. I don't have any team members in this case, but I might come down here and say, hey, I think you need to add some tests for the menu class. There aren't any, right? And that's a good observation for reasons that we talked about. There do need to be some unit tests for the menu class, I think. That is an appropriate thing to say. And so, you can make that comment. And if I see that comment, I'm like, that person's right. I really should put in some stuff for that. I can go make another commit, and that'll actually show up here. Once I go and add those tests, make another commit to this branch, it'll actually show up here. And I can see that. And then ask for more comments. And then once everything is settled, once your teammates review the pull request, review your code, and they're like, yeah, this looks good, I think it's ready to go, then we can finally go ahead and do the merge. This looks fine to me. We'll go ahead and confirm the merge. I want to return to this diagram real quick though and illustrate right, what's actually happening. I'm not merging into main, I'm merging into dev. So still, anybody who's using this has no idea that this new thing exists. But imagine that you're not the only person branching off of dev, right? There's other people working on stuff too. So maybe somebody else is doing that other task. There's going to be a whole bunch of tasks that get merged into dev. And then at the end, once everybody on your group has done a few tasks, the way that it typically works is then we say, okay, I have this half a dozen tasks or whatever that are queued up. Now I will merge all of those into main. And that takes all of those tasks that have been worked on and deploys them. That's called a deployment. Taking stuff from my development branch, merging it into the main branch is deploying all of that code that's been developed into the main branch so that anybody using our project can continue to work on it. We actually probably won't do this step, this very last step, until maybe like the very last iteration, because you've got some stuff you need to work on first, but this is the general goal here, right? And the goal that I want you to use, this is the goal for branching that I want you to use on the project as well. When you set up your project repository, which is probably going to happen on Wednesday, I'm going to try and help you out with that on Wednesday. One of the first things I want you to do is make that development branch. And one of the things that I want you to do after that is come up with the items, come up with the, make your project board and talk to your group mates and come up with these items, come up with these issues, these things that you want to add to the project. And from there, everybody can go their separate ways and just work away on their tasks, right? Merge them into the development when they're done. And then at some point before the iteration is due, you'll need to go through the pull requests as a team and write comments on them and merge them into the development branch. That's sort of the overarching workflow that I want people to use on the project. Are there any questions about that? I know that some of you are going to screw it up, and that's totally okay. That's part of the point of this class, and part of the reason why we do 3 different checkpoints on the project instead of just 1. It's hard. It's complicated. You're going to screw it up. I get emails every semester saying, I committed to main on accident, and is my project screwed? No, you're going to be okay. I understand, right? Very forgiving, especially on the first checkpoint. Very forgiving of mistakes. The idea is that hopefully over time you make fewer and fewer of them. So, I do understand that it's complicated, but please let me know if you have any questions, and don't freak out too much if you do make some mistakes. One other thing I want to point out, because it happens a lot, happens so much. These branches, please do not put someone's name in there. It's not your branch. It does not belong to you. You may be assigned to that task, but somebody else could also potentially get assigned to that task someday. So branches do not belong to people. Branches belong to tasks. I do not like to see branches with people's names on them in the project. That is an instant, I'm going to say something to you if I see it. So please keep these branches task-based, not person-based. But what I would like to do with the time that we have left is, kind of try and do a proper round of this, since this first round was me sort of just fiddling with the some of the stuff that I started last time. I would like to do one properly from start to finish. So let me see here. We already had something here to compute the subtotal. This one's actually incomplete as well, but we could add one. The one that I was thinking of that we could maybe try and do is to, well, why don't we do the one that I actually was thinking about before? Customers should be able to see the items on their order, and then that also kind of goes along with the customer should be able to see the subtotal and stuff as well. So yeah, once we've decided a task, we'll assign it to ourselves. Oops. And move it over to in progress, because that's what's going to be that's where we're going to be working. What branch am I in right now? I'm on develop. That's good. Oh, actually, I forgot to say one important thing. Or maybe what I should do is, yeah. You can delete the branch once you're done. You do not need to keep all of your old branches around once they are merged into development. So do not be afraid to click that delete branch. In fact, your repository is going to get clogged up with branches if you don't delete them, old dead branches that aren't being used anymore. So trim the dead branches off. Don't forget to delete those branches. The pull requests will remain behind, so we can always see the process that was used to get to that point. All right, back to the task at hand. I'm on the development branch. I want to create a new branch for the task that I'm going to do right now, which is view order. Oops, I forgot. I did not do that properly. It's supposed to be checkout. Now that I am in the appropriate branch, I can go over here and think about this one. That's not good. Oh, I know what happened actually. Does anybody else know what happened? I know what happened. I made a mistake. Here, let me recap why I'm confused. I switched over to the development branch, and then I checked out a new branch coming off of development. That's what I'm supposed to do, but then I went in here and my menu class is gone. Anybody know why or what I can do to fix that? I made a mistake. Think about how that menu class got there. It was created up here on this add item branch. It was merged into the development branch, but the version that's on my computer, right, is different than what's on github.com. I never actually pulled. I never actually performed a pull to get the fact that this was merged in. The version of the repository that's on my laptop is still the one where this merge didn't happen yet because I did not do the pull. I forgot to do a pull. That's my bad. I made a mistake, forgot to do a pull. That's okay though. We can always go back to the development branch and do the pull. There we go. Did that work okay? Do I see? Do I have it now? Oh, I did. No, I still don't have it. Something went wrong. Oh boy. That's not good. What did it say? It said there's no tracking information. Please specify which branch you want to merge with. Okay, git pull origin develop. There we go. Just had to be more explicit. Pull the development branch from github.com. There I can see it pulled down the file. Unfortunately, I think that branch that I created is just not a good one because I forgot to pull first. So probably what I ought to do is delete it and start over again. So I actually don't remember how to delete from the command line. It's been a while since I have done that. D, that makes sense. Oh, git branch -d. Cool. Alright, and now I can create the branch properly. And it should have the appropriate files this time. Please, maybe. Yes, okay. Yes. Forgot to do a poll last time. That was my bad, but that's not a good thing. I mean, that's not a bad thing to show you because people make mistakes all the time. especially with new tools that are complicated like Git is. All right, we want to have an option. This is actually a very, 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 very simple task now that I'm thinking about it. One that is, I don't know, starting to debate whether it's actually a good task or not. But essentially what I need to do is come down here and add in a new option that says checkout or something, right? And then within the order class, what I probably need is a toString, right? Which is going to have a for each loop. And actually, I should probably have a toString in the menu item class as well, because then I could just do something like this. Result plus equals but I don't have a toString for this one yet, so I have to do that as well. Remember from 131, if you need a refresher, right, that toString is called automatically anytime an object is turned into a string. So if we just say name plus price. Oops, that's not what I'm working on. That's a different class. I have to return the results. Okay, I think all that we need to do now is update the menu to display this when that option is selected. So we would have to say current order dot. Or we just print it out, right? We would just say this like that. I think that'll work. There are 4 options now. That should not be a magic number. That should be a constant, right? Or something. But not going to fix that right this second, I suppose. Let's try this. See if it works. So first I'll add in a burger. Oh, well, there's another problem. It's only going to prompt me once, so I have to put a loop in to keep it reprompting, right? So, okay. And probably should have an option for exiting as well. Way to exit. But just to keep things nice and hacky for now, I'll say while true. Okay, one more time. There's a burger, there's some fries. Check out. Okay, kind of worked. Burger, fries. There should be a space in between. I can definitely make that happen. That's not a difficult thing to do. But yeah, it's mostly working. Put a /n over here to move it down to the next line. Cool. I think that actually does it for this task. I want to point out that I haven't written any unit tests, and I kind of have a problem with that. That's why I was talking earlier about why I wasn't a huge fan of this task, because while it's certainly possible that you can't always write unit tests for everything, I definitely will prefer tasks that are testable. Since this one is only displaying information, it's quite literally says should be able to see. So it's mostly UI based, right? I did have to do some toString implementation, and that might actually be testable now that I think about it. This you could test. In fact, I wish I would have thought about that before. But since I'm thinking about it now, let's do it. Let's write a test because I think that should be tested. So for example, in the order test, test toString, we would want to add something to our test order, like a burger, and then we want to get the string representation, right? So that's not a good name. Putting string is not a good oops. There we go. And now we just need to include an assertion that says order text dot contains burger. Add static import. Yes, that's what we need. There we go. This is a little bit different than assert equals, right? I'm just putting a Boolean in here. Either it contains this thing or it doesn't. Let's try this test and see if it works. I think it should. Beautiful. Cool. Oh, no, it didn't run. I don't see it on the list here. This is a mistake that I make all the time, actually. Not the first time I made this mistake. Anybody see what I did wrong? Yeah. Yeah, I gotta put that at test on there. I forget that all the time. Good thing I double checked. Let's rerun it now. Oh no! It says that it failed. Is it just because of the case, or what did I act? Oh, it is lowercase b. So that's a good illustration of how your tests can be wrong. Tests are not definitive. Tests are written by humans and we'll have mistakes in them just like things written by humans. But now that I fixed that mistake, that's a good test. I actually don't think that's you know, enough testing. If I were doing this for real, I would keep trying to think of tests that I would want to include here. What should a string look like for an empty order, for example? That needs a test. You would have to make that decision and write a test for it and make sure that the code's actually going to do that if the order's empty. You know, what should it look like? Tell me what that should be. But, all right, great example of we have our tests and we have the code that passes the tests. The user interface is also included. So now that we've done that, we can once again go through the process of committing that code after we add it. And then we can push our branch. Oh, I did a bad thing. Oh no. I got sloppy. That's not good. .class files should never be in your repository. So the .java files that contain the Java code, yes, definitely. But the .class files, no, never. So let's try to fix that. Can I just do that? Yes, all right. Get rm for remove, and then the star means any file that ends in .class, and you can see that it found those same four. All right, let's do a commit again. Removing class files, whoops. All right, it happens, mistakes get made. Don't worry about it too much. Fix it, fix the mistake. I make mistakes too. And now I can say git push, what did I call this branch? Customer view order. I forgot a word there. Origin. And we're ready to head on back to the repo and create that pull request.
But again, make sure you're not comparing against main. Make sure you're comparing against develop. Boop. Awesome. Once again, just like last time, we'll let our team members look over it, provide comments. You can actually see it got both of those commits that I included on that branch, right? So any commits that I create on that branch are going to get updated with its pull request automatically. So if somebody says, hey, you need more tests, that's one test isn't good enough, Professor Shook isn't going to like that, I can go make some other tests like that, and then I'll automatically show up on the pull request, and then be like, all right, nice, this looks good. That's a good number of tests. I'm going to be looking for all this stuff on the project. This is the workflow that I'm looking for. You're going to be graded more on this than on the actual code reading, right? That is part of it, right? But you're going to be graded a lot on whether you can follow this process, whether you can do the steps in this process appropriately. So I just want to check one more time, make sure, does anybody have any questions about this workflow process? Any of the steps along the way? Does it kind of make sense what I'm asking you to do here? I hope. Okay. Fantastic. Well, that's really all that I had for you all today. I know we've got a few minutes left. If you're still working on homework assignments, I'll stick around. Please, if you have questions on any of the homework assignments, let me know how I can help you out. Come back on Wednesday because we're going to talk about the project. I'll give you all the details and hopefully make sure everybody has a group. Otherwise, have a good week. I'll see you on Wednesday.